Well, that was a pretty dull deadline day, wasn't it? Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. I'm undecided at the moment about whether or not we just carry on calling this the Arsenal Transfer Show, or if we do indeed switch over to the Arsenal News Show. I'm kind of tempted to switch. We have always done it that way, so I feel as though it's the right thing to do. That tomorrow morning will be the Raw Reaction Show, of course, reacting to today's game against Brighton. Believe it or not, Arsenal actually have a game of football to play today. After all the chaos of the weekend, I know it doesn't feel like that would be the case, but yes, Arsenal do have a game to play, and it's a very tough one against a very good Brighton side. And certainly it's going to be a very intriguing one for Arsenal to get 3 points in, because Brighton have looked very good so far. But all the attention, of course, isn't really on the game today. All the attention has been on yesterday and transfer deadline day, which certainly did not end up disappointing in terms of drama and keeping us awake until 1:45 a.m. in the morning. I was joined by an amazing number of callers on yesterday's phone-in show. If you've not yet caught up on our deadline day phone-in show, you can go from the point at 7 o'clock when we started the show, when we really thought nobody was really coming in, all the way through until towards the end, where we realized that Raheem Sterling was indeed going to become an Arsenal player. And we had a variety of opinions. It started off quite positive. We had a few smatterings of people that weren't too happy, and then more context and sensibility, I suppose, if you like, at the end as well. And it was a very, very entertaining show. It was a very, very it was probably the best fun show we've done by quite some distance, and it was just a lot of fun. And it really showcased, I think, the best of this community. Every single caller offered something. Every single caller was excellent. So yeah, really good stuff on yesterday's phone-in show. It's not an audio available show. It's only available on YouTube. So if you're listening on audio right now, I'm wondering where you can watch it. It is only a YouTube-only show, I'm afraid. So that's where, if you want to catch up on it, you'll have to hop over to YouTube to see it. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routines, of course. Good morning in the chat box to those joining us live. Angela Olawale, Glenn, Rich, Black Shine, Brad, Brian, John, NSW, Samuel, Jordan, Simple Unity, Kevin, Carl, more. We've got Simple Unity, I think I've mentioned, Mark, John, Jordan, Trevor, Stevie, Grantley Poos, Jesus in the chat, Barry, Masabalele, and plenty more of you all tuning in and joining us as always. The record of course, our continuation to try and get 1K every single day on the channel goes forward. Thank you for those that are continuing to join us today. I do know that some people choose to listen and watch throughout the transfer window and then switch off once it's closed. But the hardcore fans, the hardcore supporters and listeners of this show will be continuing on with us all the way through the season, because the show is not going anywhere. 8 a.m.s will continue. 8 a.m.s will go on. And this becomes the Arsenal News Show, of course, where you join in to hear about all the latest Arsenal news, of course, surrounding the team. There's a lot of football to talk about. We react to every game, of course, and, of course, think about injury news, team news, squad selections, Mikel Arteta's press conferences. There's always loads to discuss. And, of course, we take your questions, as always, in part 2, as we will always do as well. So please help us out by dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you're new around here. We are, so close to our target in 2024. And this is the part of the season where it kind of slows down a touch and the subscriber count starts to slow, because it's not the transfer window, but we can't lose sight of our target of trying to get to the Emirates Stadium capacity of subscribers. That amount is about 1,300 away from us at the moment. So we're getting there. We're on our way. But we need your help. So please don't leave us in the lurch, and please help continue to support us. Right, let's go into today's stories, shall we? We start with the under-18s, who produced another fantastic victory for Jack Wilshere. 5-3 win over Liverpool. They're beating some of the best and biggest academies in the country at the moment. And this is, of course, a changed side. This is a lot of players that have come through from the under-16s, under-17s. They're coming through. They're entering the side, and this Premier League Cup game win over Liverpool is a massive, massive achievement. Again, Liverpool being one of the best academies, of course, as we know, in the country as well. So to see such a strong, high goal-scoring win from a side, of course, that you'll remember had Chido Obi Martin last season, scoring a hell of a lot of goals for them. Well, the goals have not slowed down for the under-8 teams in the absence of their former star striker, which is, of course, a great sign. Meanwhile, the under-21s also in action. They beat Aston Villa by another big scoreline, 4-1 yesterday. Some intriguing exclusions from this squad, which could perhaps give us some indications about who is going to be in the first team squad, of course, today against Brighton. No Waneri, which is not surprising, really. He's now seemingly main part of the first team squad. No Thomas Setford, or Tommy Setford, rather. He is expected to be Arsenal's number 2 goalkeeper today because Neto, who joined on loan, was not registered, I don't think, before 12, unless that was done quite quietly, and it was indeed done in time, but there's an expectation that it wasn't. So Tommy Setford, we expect to be on the bench today for Arsenal's game against Brighton. And the other obvious absence was Miles Lewis-Skelly, also not on the squad list for the under-21. So perhaps with an injury that we need to talk about shortly, Miles Lewis-Skelly might also be on the bench for Arsenal for this forthcoming game in the Premier League. But it is that injury that we move to next, because Mikel Arteta, speaking in his press conference yesterday, talking to the media, was asked about the rumours that Mikel Merino had indeed suffered an injury, and he confirmed this to be the case in one really damning piece of news for Arsenal. Mikel Merino is out for what Arteta describes to be a few weeks with a shoulder injury. And that shoulder injury could be a minor problem. It could be what Arteta described as worse as potential fracture. Effectively, he was landed on in training by Gabriel, which I personally wouldn't, volunteer to have to happen to me, because clearly it causes quite the damage. It could be serious. It could be more minor. We'll know more in the coming days, of course, and we'll get more information from Arteta, I imagine, after today's game in the press conference as well. But Mikel Merino will be out of action for Arsenal at the start of his career for a period of time. And that is, of course, where I think the gap has opened up for Miles Lewis-Skelly to move to the bench in today's game. We could see him there with the squad. Moving into the transfer window, though, Aaron Ramsdale, Hagrid signed for Southampton in a deal of £18 million plus 7 million add-ons. I know there's some precious pennies in the chat box that love to get a little bit uppity about me not talking about deals in add-ons and upfront fees. But £18 million and 7 million in add-ons. I have looked at this deal, and from my perspective, I'm glad that we got the sale this summer. I don't see how we would have got any more money for him next summer at all, because he would have sat on the bench again, not really played. He would have played the cup games, if that, and have a year less left on his contract. £25 million potentially, with very achievable add-ons, I'm told, which should see Arsenal get as close to, if not all, of the maximum fee for Ramsdale. In the end, it's proven, I think, to be the right move for the club. Eddie Nketiah has joined Crystal Palace. That confirmation came through late last night, around 11:15. The reason why it was so late is that Crystal Palace did a lot of media with Eddie Nketiah over the last 48 hours, building up a massive launch of his transfer to Crystal Palace. That's why it took so long for this to be officially confirmed. But indeed, he has joined Crystal Palace in a 25 million plus 5 million add-ons deal. I should say there is a sell-on clause in both of Ramsdale's deals. I haven't heard anything to suggest there's a sell-on clause for Nketiah yet. That might be something that needs to be clarified. But there was a sell-on clause in Ramsdale's deal. I don't know if there's a sell-on at the moment in Nketiah's deal. That, of course, does need to change. But Edu got the money that he wanted, that Arsenal wanted, that so few people thought that we would end up getting, including myself. 25 million was my threshold that I was happy to sell at. But Edu ended up standing firm on the valuation of the player and got the 30 million total fee in the end, what he wanted. And another late move that from the perspective of somebody that wanted us to add a forward yesterday, I'm not particularly happy about this story here. Reiss Nelson has joined Fulham on loan until the end of the season. No option, no obligation. Straight loan. I believe Fulham will be covering the majority, if not all, of the players' wages as well. certainly a portion of them. This is a real strange one to me. I'm in the perspective of we needed to add a forward yesterday before anybody left, and bringing in a player, as we will talk about in a second, has kind of been offset a bit by Reiss Nelson leaving. We had 6 attackers prior to yesterday. We end the window with 6 attackers. So I'm a bit frustrated by this one. People have come to me to try and make me feel a bit better about it, trying to explain why this has happened in the sense of Reiss has kind of pushed for this move, is the theory, and he doesn't want to stay at Arsenal and not play too many minutes this season, so he's really pushed to get a loan in the last few moments of the window, and we'd rather, of course, move him out, give him those minutes, than keep him on the bench, unhappy at the club for the forthcoming season. He does need game time, don't get me wrong, and if we are going to get a good sale for him in 2025, if he has a very good season in the Premier League, this is his first Premier League loan, it's worth pointing out. You know, he's 24 years old now. He's been to Hoffenheim. He's been to Feyenoord. He's been on these loans. He's never gone on loan to a Premier League club. This is his first Premier League club he's going on loan to, where we might see what Reiss can do on a more regular occasion. If he has an excellent loan move, he still has time, of course, plenty of time remaining on his Arsenal contract, because he only signed a new contract last summer, I think it was. So, yeah, there's still plenty of time left on his contract. So Arsenal will be looking in 2025 to with 2. I think there's still 2 years. He signed through until 2027, so there's still loads of time. They will, of course, look to try and sell him for more, and hopefully this low move enables that. Of course, I don't think his value was going to go down anymore, really being at Arsenal for another season. But of course, in this case, I think it can go up. Being at Fulham, and that's the positive side that I'm hanging on to with this deal. So let's talk about the 2 incomings from yesterday. The first one, of course, is Neto, who signed on loan from Bournemouth. He is going to be Aaron Ramsdale's replacement for the forthcoming season and be Arsenal's number 2. He shouldn't be. We don't expect him to be on the bench today for the game, of course, against Brighton, but will be on the bench for the forthcoming games. There is one downsides to this, quite a significant downside to this deal. Neto played for Bournemouth in their second round Carabao Cup game, which means, according to, unless the rules have changed and I've somehow missed it, he is cup tied for those League Cup games. Now, of course, Arsenal play Bolton in their third round game of the League Cup, of which case just play Tommy Setford. I'm not too concerned about playing Tommy Setford in that game at all. We've spent around £1 million, just under, on the former Ajax youth goalkeeper. He was considered to be very close to breaking into the Ajax senior side. If he is considered to be of that level of standard, I don't have an issue with him playing against the League One side in the League Cup. Of course, as those rounds progress, if we get harder teams later on in the competition, should we progress through the competition, of course, Raya will have to come into those games. But Neto's first game for Arsenal may now not be all the way through until the new year when the FA Cup starts. Or, of course, we may choose to use him in some Champions League games against some of the lower opposition that we've been drawn against, maybe. But no games in the Champions League of our draw are what you describe as just kind of a walkover. Maybe like the likes of Dinamo Zagreb, we could potentially use Neto in those games. It was important that Arsenal brought in a backup keeper. Of course, with so little time remaining in the window, Arsenal wanted to sign João Garcia from Espanyol. However, they were unwilling to meet the £25 million approximate release clause that he had. That would, of course, with it being or buyout clause being a Spanish player, Arsenal would have to pay the full 25 million pounds up front. And that is not an amount of money that they felt was worthy of the player at this point in time. And they weren't going to be bullied into paying that full price, especially when they felt that they can go and get another goalkeeper in Neto for the rest of this season. It's just a straight loan, no options, no obligations, to my understanding. And I think, if Raya was to get injured, which, by the way, for those that have been wondering, Raya has suffered just one injury in his entire senior career, which happened nearly 3 years ago. He missed 10 matches because of a knee injury, but since then has had no issues. Before then had no issues. Raya's bill of health has been very good, touch wood. And so there isn't, he's not what would be considered, like there is with Edison, for instance, to be a high risk, or Alisson to another degree, to be high risk goalkeepers in regards to injuries. So Neto can't play in the Carabao Cup, and Neto can't play against Bournemouth in the Premier League. I think it's a fine deal. It's never going to be a deal that I'd ever lose my head over. I think he'll be okay. He'll do the job that we need him to do, which is fine. If you want to read more about Neto, I did interview Sam Davis at the Back of the Net AFC Bournemouth podcast. You can read that interview on the Football.London website on my page. Just go to the Neto article that's on there, and you'll be able to get an insight into what he thinks of the positives and negatives, the pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses of the Brazilian goalkeeper. The big story of yesterday, as we all know, however, was Arsenal confirmed the loan signing of Raheem Sterling in one of the most dramatic late deadline deals that we have seen ever, I think, in the transfer window. Arsenal have done, and Edu in particular, with this deal, no matter what you think of Raheem Sterling as a player, if we just have a look at the deal as is, it's one of the most impressive loan deals that Arsenal have ever managed to put together. There is no fee, no loan fee whatsoever. There is no option to buy. There is no obligation to buy Raheem Sterling in this deal. And Arsenal will be paying less than 50% of Raheem Sterling's wages. Chelsea will be paying a considerable percentage, more than 50%, of the players' wages. Chelsea are effectively paying Raheem Sterling to help Arsenal win the Premier League title against his former club, Manchester City. The narratives of this deal are quite amusing in some senses. And of course, Raheem Sterling scored 10 goals last season for Chelsea, got 8 assists, 18 goal contributions. That puts him up in terms of a difficult season, and a season of which he was heavily criticised, and a season that Chelsea were heavily criticised. 18 goal contributions puts him up alongside some of Arsenal's top performers, actually, in terms of their goal contributions last season. It's an important signing. We had to get in a forward. I told you for weeks leading up to this deadline day, if Arsenal didn't land a forward, I would be incredibly disappointed. Am I disappointed it's Raheem Sterling? In comparison to somebody like Nico Williams, of course, I'm not of the same level of excitement, but I cannot help but get somewhat excited about this. I can't help but feel that the reuniting of Sterling and Arteta as player and coach, because if there was one man that got the best from Raheem Sterling, we know from Arteta's words, from Pep's words, from Sterling's words, we know that Mikel Arteta was the man that got the best years from Raheem Sterling. He's had a difficult time at Chelsea, despite still delivering in some games. And I'm really intrigued to see what he does. He won't be in the squad today because, of course, he was signed after the deadline that we needed to register the player for. The next time that we will see Raheem Sterling in an Arsenal shirt in a squad will be the North London derby after the next international break. The game after that, of course, will be at Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium. It is certainly a trial by fire when it comes to seeing Raheem Sterling in an Arsenal shirt. The next game that we'll see him in terms of being in an Arsenal shirt at the Emirates Stadium will be against Leicester City on the 28th of September at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. That is going to be an interesting reaction. Of course, I would be interested to see if they present Sterling and Neto to the fans today on the field. That sometimes happens. We see other clubs do it. Arsenal haven't tended to do it, but what we have seen in the past, I remember David Raya last summer. David Raya was in the stands before he had officially signed for Arsenal in their game. I can't remember what the game was. It was one of the home games last season. But yeah, we saw David Raya, and I saw David Raya actually go through the mix zone before he'd officially signed for Arsenal. These two have now signed. So it would be interesting to see if they do a bit of a reveal of both players on the pitch to get a reception from the fans prior, of course, to them joining up. They will undertake their first training session on Monday. Probably, actually, they may even turn up at Sherbourne Realty Training Centre on Sunday. There won't be a usual training session, of course, after a game, but they may indeed start their Arsenal training this week. Sterling isn't in the England squad. Neto is not in the Brazil squad. You may even see a behind closed doors friendly in the next 2 weeks. It wouldn't be surprising. This is something that Arsenal have done before. Arsenal have tended to use international breaks, and Arteta has liked to do these behind closed doors friendlies. It may be that we have one of those where we bed in Sterling and Neto into the team while the international break is on. So I'm sure to get more of your thoughts and comments on the Raheem Sterling deal in part 2 of the show. But from my perspective, overall, I'm happy we got a forward in. And of the forwards that were available, he's a pretty good one. So that's where my head's at with that. So assessing the work Edu has done this window, we always like to do this at the end of these windows, just to give you a kind of few minutes of where my head is at regarding the window as a whole. Arsenal went into this window with the aims of trying to complete two particular signings as priority targets. They completed neither of those two players. They were Nico Williams and Benjamin Šeško. Both players haven't moved. It's not as if Arsenal failed to beat another club to the signing of those players. Both players have decided the best course of action for them is to stay at their current clubs of RB Leipzig and Athletic Club for the rest of the forthcoming season. We do know that Williams, of course, his preference at this moment in time remains Barcelona. It will be interesting if Arsenal return for Williams in the summer of 2025. That release clause, I imagine, is still going to be effective and available to activate next summer. But Barcelona will, of course, also still be keen. And it'll be also keen to see how he gets on this season after winning the Euros and having such hype surrounding him. He didn't have the best game the other week against Barca. And then, of course, Benjamin Šeško has continued to be a starting figure now for Leipzig over the forthcoming season. If he has a really, really good season, Arsenal, of course, I imagine, will be going back in for him. He does have a new release clause of a higher amount, his new contract, and there is a gentleman's agreement that is understood with Leipzig that Šeško can leave if indeed a club comes in and pays that figure that RB Leipzig are looking for and have inserted into this new contract. The signings that we did make: Sterling, Neto, Mikel Merino, and of course Ricardo Calafiori, as well as some youth additions in net, which we needed to do because we obviously lost so many youth goalkeepers over the last year. Those signings that we have made are decent. You know, in terms of just incomings, it's a 6.5 out of 10 for me. David Raya, of course, was signed on a permanent deal as well. It's about a 6.5 for me. In terms of incomings, I'd be at a 7, but the Mikel Merino injury has affected my view of it, and it's completely unfair. So it's a 7 with an asterisk next to it for me. 7 out of 10 with an asterisk, 6.5 because of the injury, but that's absolutely not on Arsenal in any way, shape, or form. There's no way of knowing that was going to happen. I'm at a 7 asterisk in terms of this window. We added a defender, we added a midfielder, we added a forward. And the issue for me, though, is when it comes to... And that rating is also impacted by sales. The sales we have made have been excellent. I mean, if you were doing a rating just on incomings and outgoings, it would be a solid 8.5, close to 9 out of 10 just on outgoings. And it would be a 6 out of 10 in terms of incomings alone, I think. The outgoings have been excellent. And some people say, well, that averages out to about 7.5 out of 10. So I'm sure you do. But there's weights to these things. Weighting of incomings is a higher weighting than outgoings for me. But the sales are excellent. Getting over £100 million worth of player through the door in terms of money from their departures of the sale of players like Smith Rowe and Nketiah, Ramsdale, but also the loan fees for players like Lokonga. Sorry, not loan fee for Lokonga, but the obligation of Tavares next summer, the option of Lokonga next summer, the sell-on clauses that we've seen come through for other players this summer as well. Add-ons activated, like for Bernd Leno, of course, has come in this summer. Fabio Vieira, we've got him off the books with full wages, of course, as well. The Reiss Nelson loan is the downer on the side of the outgoings for me. Reiss Nelson's exit is a frustration for me. I don't think we needed to do that. I don't think we needed to make ourselves thinner, but people will argue, of course, that he wanted to go and it's pointless having him sit on the bench. But I personally feel as though we've not necessarily we've not strengthened in numbers in the forward line. We've strengthened in quality. Sterling is a much better player than Nelson. But of course, that is something to factor in. And people will point out as well that Jurrien Timber is now in the squad, of which he wasn't last season. So he as well is another addition, but it doesn't count in terms of the summer transfer business. The ultimate aim, the ultimate conclusion can only be made once the season is and has run its course. We won't really know how good Arsenal's business has been until the season is over, until the season has completed. We will not know until the end of the campaign, or even maybe up until January at least, what business was good, what business was bad, what business we absolutely should have done that we didn't. And I think that what we're looking at right now is a team, of course, that are in a better place than they were at the start of last season. We're definitely stronger than we were last season. And we've made some important decisions in the squad. A player that, of course, has been promoted to the senior side that is going to get the minutes that Fabio Vieira would have got is Ethan Nwaneri. I'm much, much happier seeing Nwaneri get the minutes than I am Vieira at this moment in time. The Vieira experiment has run its course, and it's now time for Ethan Nwaneri to come into it. The questions, of course, will be, have Arsenal done enough? And we won't know the answer to those questions until we get a few weeks and months into the season. If injuries have hit us, if issues that have emerged because we didn't do enough business or we made some silly decisions in outgoings, like with Nelson, for instance, we will have to wait and see. But we won't know until those games come around. We won't know until those weeks and months come around. So until then, we are going to have to be patient. But you don't have to be patient when it comes to getting the best quality VPN service on the net right this very second. Because if you go over to nordvpn.com/Gooner to get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2 year plan, you can get yourself the best VPN service on the interwebs. Don't wait so late. Don't wait until the end of deadline day to get the best deal on a VPN. Get that now. Get your VPN service through the door by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner to get yourself that significant discount. If you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, but if you want to cancel your subscription, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. And on top of that, of course, it gives you the ability to change geolocation digitally. If that's on your laptop or on your phone or on your tablet, you can do any of the above. They're all very helpful, and they're all very much needed. Not only that, but of course, you can win a signed Dennis Bergkamp shirt, courtesy of Football Prize. The link to this prize is down in the description. There are only 71 tickets, the 325 that went on sale, available. It is selling out. It is going quick. And the competition ends on Monday at 7:30 p.m. So that's UK time. So don't miss out on this chance to win an amazing piece of Arsenal memorabilia. There's not one, not two, but 3 chances to win these Bergkamp, one of these Bergkamp shirts. So do not hesitate. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 that's where we tackle your questions. Word of warning, I talked a lot in part 1. I talked a hell of a lot. There was a lot to talk about, so apologies for that, but it does mean that part 2 is going to be slightly shorter because Arsenal's game against Brighton is an early kickoff today, which means that I'm catching a train to head up to the Emirates for my breakfast this morning. So I do love early kickoffs because it does mean cooked breakfast in the press lounge. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But yes, it does mean that the show will be shorter than usual. Will also points out I need to go and get Oasis tickets. This is also true. However, I am in a really tough position because I am going to struggle to get tickets because I'm going to be in transit to the station whilst tickets go live. So it's going to be a mobile phone job and a case of crossing my fingers and seeing what happens. But yeah, I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens. I saw a thing the other day saying you got like a 2.7% chance of getting tickets this morning because of the demand for them. So that could be fun. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. So I look forward to that. But thank you for reminding me. I actually did forget about that. Right. King says, am I looking forward or am I looking to make a tactical breakdown on Sterling? I probably will put together for you a tactical breakdown. Yes, we'll probably get a Chelsea expert on and we'll talk about Sterling. We'll talk about what he's done, what he's been good at, what he's been not so good at, and how we expect to see him perform at Arsenal this season. We'll probably do that next week during the international break. So yes, there should be a tactical breakdown on Sterling. Probably not one on Neto, to be fair. I don't think we need one on Neto, but certainly one on Sterling I will look to bring you. Kieran says, both X factors in attack, box efficiency, where issues were noted by the club that haven't been really solved this window. Whilst I like Mikel Merino and Ricardo Calafiori, I think we've left ourselves a bit light too. Damien with the kind donation says, please accept this as an apology for any bad behavior in the Discord yesterday. In our defense, it was a stressful day. The Discord it wasn't very Discord-like yesterday. There was plenty of discord between one another. But yes, it got a little bit heated, as it does. But everyone remained friends at the end of it, I think. I'm pretty sure. So in the end, it turned out all right. Thank you, Damien, though, for your very kind donation and words. I appreciate it. And Sweater Merlot has been a member now for 18 months, says, I've now paid for your yacht, Tom. Goodness me, how cheap do you think yachts are? And how expensive do you think the memberships are? They're the 2 questions that I've got. Tom says 2.7% chance for Oasis tickets. That's better odds than Arsenal getting tickets for the games. Red membership ballot. categorically and statistically not true, Tom, but I take the joke, and it's a very good one. Walter says, I think this was a decent window. I think we set ourselves up to go big, like for an Isak or a Kudus, etc. next summer, as those types of deals didn't seem viable during this window. I tell you what, the expectations for the summer of 2025 will and should be absolutely huge. It should be massive. Like, we should be expecting some big deals from Arsenal next summer, and there won't be too much in the way of excuses for Arsenal not spending big next summer on big players. There is now, with Arsenal making more money this summer than they spent, there is a lot to be said about what Arsenal could do next summer, and maybe even in January as well. Graham says, considering who was available that Arsenal were able to sign, I think Sterling is a good option. He can play across the front three and even play in midfield. He's definitely an upgrade on Nelson. Oh, without question. We're talking about a player that's a significantly better standard than Nelson is. With all respect to Nelson, he's a good player. Sterling is better. This is a player that got over 100 goals in just over 300 games for Manchester City. Yes, his goal contributions have not gone as fast as they had done when he's been at Chelsea, but even last season ended up with 10 goals and 8 assists across the campaign. 40 plus appearances. His reliability is pretty good in terms of availability. So that's also a big plus for someone like Sterling as well. Mena says, hey, Tom, Salah-Eddin looked really promising during preseason. Do you think he'll be involved in the first team at any point soon? I don't think so. I think there was also expectation that he could have left on loan. I don't know if there's a later deadline, of course, for other potential loan moves still to take place. I think there usually is an extension on some loan moves, emergency loans. So Salah-Eddin could still leave. I know there was a lot of interest in him yesterday, but sadly nothing seemed to come to fruition for him. Special says, Osimhen will be a massively cut price player as he's staying at Napoli and has been frozen out. Should we go for him in January? I think that the reality of Osimhen was actually laid bare for everybody yesterday. He didn't move. The wages he was asking for were ludicrous for a player of his level personally. He's a very decent striker, but he's not a player that should be asking for the amount of money he was asking Chelsea for. And quite frankly, I think it's unsurprising that Osimhen didn't end up getting a move and will now seemingly be somewhat frozen out of Napoli. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that he is included, and I hope that he does play games for them. It's important that players do that. But he pushed heavily for a move that never materialized. Only the Saudi Arabian sides looked to do the deal, but in the end, even they chose to sign Ivan Toney instead. He is not good enough for Arsenal, from my perspective, and I think that was shown by the fact that nobody really, in the end, pushed to try and get that deal done at the level of money he was obviously asking for. Leigh Bloomer says 3 Chelsea players in the last 4 transfer windows. I like that those players worked out so far, but I hate that we are taking their problems off their hands. Say that, I'm more than happy to take their problems off their hands when we turn their problems into some of our biggest assets. Havertz has been a success. Jorginho has been a success. And now, of course, we're looking at perhaps Raheem Sterling's loan deal being a success. I'm intrigued. If it goes really, really well for Sterling this summer, I'm curious what happens next summer. Imagine he has an unbelievable season for us. Like, what happens? There's no option. There's no obligation. There's no incentive for Arsenal to sign him again, and he'll be 30 next year. I think Arsenal should still cut ties. You know, a really good season for Sterling, great. Take it, accept it, move on to the player that you see as Arsenal's future. I think he can be an asset for us this season, but I mean, the deal financially is amazing for Arsenal. They do done an absolute job on Chelsea, that's for sure. King Luch says, hey, Tom, I've been thinking with Martinelli's recent slump in form, do you think that we could shake things up and could provide competition to Saka, or Sterling and or Trossard, I think that was meant to be, rotate on the left-hand side? Of course, Martinelli has played on the right. I'm not the biggest fan of him playing on the right. Sterling can also play, it's worth pointing out, on the right. And has you know, his footwork is excellent at trying to work his way into the box on that right-hand side, and he wins penalties. Something that's not also been mentioned, he scored 2 free kicks for Chelsea last season. I know I went to the game between Chelsea and Leicester. I reported on that game in the FA Cup where he missed that horrendous free kick. But he has scored a couple of free kicks for Chelsea during his short time with the club, and maybe he could be Arsenal's potential, when on the field, new free kick taker. It's something that Arsenal fans were talking about at the beginning of the window, that we needed more of a free kick specialist. He can score free kicks and has scored free kicks. So, yeah, that's perhaps one to also think about when he is on the field. I'm intrigued to see how he fits in, how he starts, when he starts, where he starts. All of these questions will be answered, of course, in the coming weeks. I think he'll start on the bench, of course, for Arsenal, but he will get opportunities to play far more than he was going to be getting for Chelsea this season. You might say that's telling. I just think that's the reality of Chelsea Football Club at the moment. Right, that's going to bring us to the end of today's show. Sorry for the short part 2. If it's any consolation, I did talk to you guys for 3 hours yesterday evening, so I think I've earned myself this end to the show, and I do need to head over to the Emirates, of course, as well for today's game against Brighton. Big game. We can't take our focus off of the Premier League. We need to win this. Big opportunity to get 9 points from 9 and to beat a side that, of course, picked up maximum points themselves so far going into this international break. Excited to see the team, excited to see the players, excited to see what we're going to start. Maybe Calafiori will get more minutes today, and that left-back position is going to be intriguing. Is Trossard going to start? All questions that will, of course, be answered. I look forward to it. It's going to be great. And best of luck to all of you that are trying to buy tickets today for Oasis. I'm going to give it a go, but I'm not expecting things, nor am I going to lose my head if I don't get them. It's a lottery, as they say. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.